Appeals meeting to order at 3 p.m. on February 16th, 2026. Rachel, are you taking the minutes?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have our roll call then?
I do.
Okay. I did not hear from Ms. Fell or Ms. Houston, Mr. Houston, as to why they are not.
I did.
Okay.
Mr. Houston was going to be up north, and he, I'm sorry, I should have forwarded him to you instead.
As long as you know.
I said I thought we would have enough.
As we do. So as long as you were noted of that, that's just fine. All right. On our agenda here, we have a public hearing. A hearing scheduled for an interpretation of the Village of Waterford's building code and ordinances. Yeah, we will. We want to do this now or at new business? Doesn't matter.
Oh, the minutes? Or the
I'm going to do the public hearing part with new business, but we'll do the minutes first, if that's okay.
Sure.
Okay. So I'm looking for reading and approval of the minutes from our last meeting, which was on 7/21/2025.
Reading and approval of minutes, motion by Nash.
All right, I have a motion for approval. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. Any conversation or questions on those minutes? All right, hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Minutes are approved from our last meeting on 7/21/2025. All right, moving on to item number 1 of new business. Discussion on interpretation of the Village of Waterford's building codes. And this committee will consider an appropriate motion for action. Mr. Bilodeau, I believe you have a presentation?
Yes, sir.
Try and keep it fairly short. I've had stuff and I've written stuff and it was 6-8 pages long and I'm like, that's not gonna work. It's just too convoluted. So I'm trying to keep it to the major points and keep it more clear and concise for everyone. So basically, I intend to show that the village building inspector is not following village and state plumbing code requirements, specifically in regards to section state code 382.40, item 7, which is the sizing of piping in the house, on an ongoing basis, adversely affecting the people of the village. So some of the facts that have been, and if you don't believe they're facts, please stop me and let me know, but these are items that have been confirmed and talked about previously. So my home was deemed non-compliant in January of 2025 by the state for violations of 382.47. I filed a complaint with the DSPS after the builder, the plumber, and the village all refused to admit any wrongdoing. The village did not require water calcs before May of 2025. This was confirmed email from Martin directly, and multiple open record requests show no water calcs or plumbing plans have been submitted prior to May of 2025. Since May of 2025, the village now requires water calcs. That has been confirmed by open record requests and an email to Horner, in which they stated the village is requiring them to submit water calcs. Village has not been providing pressure information to builders or plumbers. This was confirmed in email from Rick and open record requests. Historically, there was one email in this latest request that he did provide the residual pressure at the meter, at the hydrant, which I'll show is not the correct measurement to even be providing, so we're not providing the correct information even if we do provide information. So a couple key points in the codes. Definition of building inspector, pretty straightforward, but appointed all the powers and duties for plumbing, I'll stay under Wisconsin and village ordinances. Pretty clear cut. Adoption of codes 98-7A. These codes shall be enforced by the building inspector, and that includes the Uniform Dwelling Code 320 to 325 and the Uniform Plumbing Code 381 to 387. If you go to 382.20, section 1B2, plan and review plan review and approval of 1 and 2 family dwellings. 382 is the dwelling code, or plumbing code, sorry. It states review and approval of plumbing plans for 1 and 2 family dwellings shall be in accordance with the provisions specified in SPS 320.09. So I go to 320.09. Procedures for obtaining uniform building permit. It's 2 sections. Section 6, required data. All plans submitted for approval shall be accompanied by sufficient data, calculations, information to determine if the dwelling will meet the requirements of this code. So there needs to be enough information provided. And approval of plans, section 8. If the agency administering and enforcing the code determines that the plan submitted for a 1 or 2 dwelling substantially conforms to the provisions of this code, then a permit may be issued. So the inspector has to be able to determine that this build is going to be compliant when done. And then 382.40, subsection 7 is the sizing of plumbing, and it just really states the sizing shall be based on the empirical method and limitations outlined in this subsection. So 320.09 does not specifically say that plumbing plans need to be submitted. I'll admit that. But it does say that all data needed to determine compliance must accompany the application of a permit. So I reached out to the state, TSPS, asked for clarity on what their stance was on the situation. They stated that 320.09 is the code reference for finding information about 1 or 2 family dwellings. That 320.09.5B2C is the only code section specifically providing the reference to plumbing as it relates to information needed on the floor plan. That just states you have to tell them where the fixtures are. That's included on the plans, so it's there. 320.09.6, required data, is applicable for all other information needed by the local municipality to approve 1 or 2 family dwelling permits. This includes things like plumbing calculations, plumbing specifications, etc. None of that is included in any of our packets. The water calcs that are being provided currently, I can go through, but they're not there. So at the end, he says, therefore, all the provisions within Wisconsin Admin Code SPS 382 apply to 1 and 2 bedroom, 1 or 2 family dwellings, including 382.40, subsection 7 as referenced. So he is saying, pretty straightforward, that's required. So currently, the village is not requiring water calcs prior to issuing a permit. Does now require, sorry, we are currently requiring a permit. At least the water calc. No one appears to be reviewing them for accuracy. I've pulled the last 15, 17, and given publicly available information, I can prove them all incorrect. The first line starts with, if you look at the water calc, which I can give you a copy, and I will, because I want to go through it in a second. Item 2, I'm using a Horner form. Low pressure at main in the street. So Rick provided Horner 50 PSI at the meter, or at the hydrant. At the hydrant. Clarification from the state is it's the minimum tower height, which Doug has provided me in the past, which is 918.7. And then the elevation of the house. That house is at 814. So at the meter, the pressure could be anywhere from about 45 to 54. So 50 is right, but that's not the minimum. So they're not calculating, that's 2.5 PSI already gone right off the bat there. So we're not providing the needed information. The easiest way I think to demonstrate this is to walk through this water calc real quick. And I'll give you a clean copy, and I can walk through it and point out a few things as we go through. I made some copies right there. That's just so happens that Horner's at this facility putting plumbing in today. know if I have any more copies. We're kind of running out. So, this was recently approved. So item one, you know, we started on the water service side. Item one is the gallon in the building. So Belinsky did provide a listing of all the fixtures in the facility, in the house. So that's the first number you start out with. Second number is low pressure at the main in the street, and that is the minimum pressure specified in the code. It's the minimum pressure that can be available at that location. So that's when the tower is at its minimum serviceable height. So you calculate it as a delta elevation. It's not something you have to go out and measure. It's something that Doug, or anyone that has the information can, I know the tower's at 918.7 is the lowest. This house is at 814. You get a number there. So they took it at the street, which is above, so we would correct that to 47.5 at the meter. So the meter is probably the easiest way to look at it. If your item 3 and 2 would account for any change from the meter, so you can go to the main and say, okay, I got 50 psi at the main, but then when I go up 10 feet, now I've got 48, you know, whatever it ends up being. So you have less pressure. So you got it's all static pressure, so it's just a factor of elevation. So they say they're using a 3/4 inch meter, and they're saying 115 developed length from the main to the meter. I don't know if the plan submitted actually calculate from the center of the street to the meter, but that's what that number is. Going down to available pressure after the water meter, 5.8 psi loss, 1.25 inch water service. You can't know that friction loss. You can't verify that friction loss without knowing what the material is. We don't have a plumbing plan, we don't have any specifications, we don't know anything, so you can't confirm that number. The plumber, that number happens to be for polyethylene piping, but it doesn't say that.
Polyethylene water lateral piping?
Yes, yes. It's normally a copper equivalent size polyethylene. And that would be 5.8 for that length. So, but that can't be confirmed. Elevation of the meter, we said it's 0. Pressure loss due to meter. There's no specification of what meter is going to be used. I'm assuming it's an I-pearl 3/4 inch because it does say 3/4 inch up in the top section. But it doesn't say how that meter is being mounted. My home, they use that number 2 meter horn that I've described multiple times. For this house, that meter horn, if used, would lose 10.5 psi by itself in this calculation. So that number goes from 1.9 to 12.5. But that can't be confirmed again without knowing how that meter is being installed. At the end of the day, that's really, I can walk through the rest, but everything else is basically correct once you go down there. But at the end of the day, they had a 19 psi loss available for loss. If you assume the number 2 meter, which is worst case, you assume minimum height, you assume basics, nothing crazy, it goes from 19 to 6. Now once you have this calculated, that doesn't tell you anything. All it tells you is what size piping you should be using. It doesn't tell you what size piping the plumber is using. What's he plumbing the main run at? What's he plumbing going up to the second story? None of that's here. That is the part that has to be submitted on a plan that says, okay, in this run we're going to have 12 gallons a minute and it needs to be at least this size. Those charts are included in the code. I only have one copy, so I'll just kind of try and show you here. You pick your 19 or your 6, and like the main run's going to be 15.5 gallons per minute because that's what you got coming in the house. So you're going to start at something that can carry 16.5, which is inch and a quarter. But when you get down to, if you're using the 19, you can stay in this path much longer. Here, you can only cover 9.5 TPM with 1 inch. Here, you can cover 14.5. So as soon as you drop your first hose bib, 3 gallons per minute, you're at 12.5. You're now going down. You're keeping it up in size where he can go down in size. So that we know if he's running 1 inch to that or he's running 1.25 inches to that. Each one of those, so that you end up going down 2 completely different paths when you're actually designing the plumbing to go into the house. Unless you know what's going in the house, you cannot confirm that that house is going to be compliant when built. This is what, again, I only have one color to drop the end out, hand it around. This is what Horner ended up having to supply the state in order to get my house approved. We've got the pressure losses for the meter, we've got the installation method for the meter, we've got the losses for the type of piping there are, everything water calc. This is it's a blue line E, and it's just one level. I didn't do all 3 levels, but that's the type of information that's required in order to determine. From this, an inspector can say, yes, this house is going to be built. As long as it's built this way, it's going to be in compliance. So, sorry, let me find my place again. I'll mess up here. So kind of in summary, Village Code Chapter 8 adopts the UDC and UPC and assigns the building inspector as the responsible for enforcement. State DSPS has confirmed that 38240 Section 7 is applicable to 1 and 2 family dwellings. Village engineer, DPW, or inspector, I'm not sure where it needs to come from, it just says it needs to come from the village, is not providing the information needed to comply with this. Same section, that's the water pressure mainly. More information the building inspector is currently requiring is needed to confirm compliance to 38240 Section 7, hopefully I've shown you that. Building inspector has admitted to not collecting the required data. I use required data because that's in the code. Building and occupancy permits are being issued with unknown compliance of 38240-7. The data is never calculated. I've asked repeatedly for any information that the village has related to plumbing calculations, and everything I've gotten was nothing initially, and recently it's been water calcs that are not complete. Therefore, to me, it's only logical to conclude the village inspector has not been doing the duty required of the position, which affects every homeowner in the village. It's really the cause of our water pressure issue. My home, as it sits right now, is non-compliant. If it was built, I had other issues prior to it being main lateral was pinched, which caused a lot of other issues, which elevated me to have to understand all these codes. If it is where it sits today, my neighbor's house is also non-compliant, built at the same time. He says, yeah, it's okay. I'm like, yeah, it's okay. I mean, you don't want to take 2 showers. You don't want to run a washer and a dryer, or a washer and a dishwasher and take a shower. I mean, it's an issue, and these codes are designed not to have that be an issue. So by not following it, continuing to not follow it, is a real issue in my mind. So my requested actions is the ruling on whether this is, what the requirements and what the code really says. And therefore, and if the inspector has been found not to be following those, I'm not looking for anything personally, but what I'm looking for is stop work orders on all current projects, single family dwellings, 1 and 2 family dwellings. We don't have the data needed to know their compliance, so we should stop that work right now. We should review all the building and occupancy permits approved, going back as far as, I don't know what's allowed from that standpoint, but I went back 5 years and couldn't find any data after mid-May of 2020. So we've been doing this for a while. A lot of houses have been built since then. And then I would like to see all homeowners that, once we do that review, the current homeowners be notified that their house was built without the proper information to determine if the plumbing was compliant or not. You don't have to state that it's non-compliant, but there's no data to show that the building inspector confirmed that house was compliant in regards to plumbing. Any questions?
I have a few, if I might.
Yep.
How many daily occupants are in your house?
Daily?
Yeah.
2?
Two. So it's just a two-person home,
Yep.
single-family home. Did you buy a model home or did you have it custom built for yourself?
It was a spec.
A spec.
Ready home from Belinsky.
Okay. Do you know the model of home that you bought? You
Elise.
usually name them or give
It's
them
an
a number.
Elise.
Elite.
Elise.
Elise.
Yep.
Do you know if any current Elise model home owners have similar issues throughout the Belinsky cadre of homes?
No.
Do you have a water softener?
I do.
Did you have it installed? Was it installed when you bought the house, or did you put it in after you moved in?
I had it put in after, so the water calcs that the state has approved right now do not include the water softener.
Gotcha. So with water softener systems, there's multiple varieties and sizes of which you can add on iron curtains and microbial dispensing units. When you had your water softener put in, did you notice your water pressure issue before you had your water
Right.
softener
As soon
installed?
as we walked in, yeah.
I'm sorry?
As soon as we moved in, yeah.
Okay.
And we bypassed the softener.
You have,
We've
okay,
done
I was
that.
gonna say, is
We've
it
shown it's not-
bypassed or ported in cereal is what we call that?
Yeah, it's a Kinetico, so very low pressure, dual system, it's a $6,000 softener.
And you turn it to bypass mode and you don't see a pressure drop or increase at all? No, okay. And then, have you used any sort of like fixture pressure meter method at each fixture to determine the
Yep.
comfort level? Is there an objective
We've-
outcome on a pressure?
We put a pressure meter on the
Easy.
upstairs bathroom shower. Took the head off, mounted a pressure gauge there, and was easily able to get to the 20 PSI, below the 20 PSI required by state code.
It was
Just-
running at below state code.
Just turning on a couple faucets, other than that one running, yes,
Okay.
it would fall
So
below.
individually at the source, you get pressure to code,
Yep.
but when you run multiple units at once, you get
Well,
a drop.
statically,
Yes.
we
Your
get pressure.
hydraulic static goes down.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah, in fact, what started me down this road was I had sprinklers put in.
In your home?
Yeah.
Lawn sprinkler system.
Lawn
I
sprinkler.
was gonna say not fire sprinkler system.
No.
So you've got
That'd be
a
a whole
lawn
other story,
sprinkler
right?
system,
So when I put my lawn sprinkler system in, the head would not even pop up.
didn't have the pressure to do that if something else in the house was running.
No, it was on its own meter. So the service in the street was pinched. The village has since put a new 2-inch line from the main to my house. And that fixed the sprinkler issue.
So the village put in a private water lateral on your behalf already.
Yes. Yeah, so the village has done that part of it. It was a long process, but we did finally get, because
When did that take
Belinsky
place?
and the village were kind of doing this.
Yeah, when did that take place? March of this year?
No, I'm trying to think, we fixed the lawn, so it's been about over a year ago. They did it in the fall of the previous year, so fall of '24.
And now you have a 2-inch lateral coming into your house
To the curb stop.
to the curb stop. And then from the curb stop, you have 1.25 inch polyethylene going to your home? I mean, I'm just gonna ask this question out loud because I feel it's incumbent upon me to ask, but have you taken out all the filter screens and all of your appliances and cleaned them out thoroughly a couple of times? It's a newer home, so sometimes when cutting PEX or cutting CPVC or even copper, sediment gathers in the pipes, and when you pressurize the system, hits the back of the screens, drastically limits pressure. I'm sure you've done that.
Also, I'm a mechanical engineer by trade, so
So you understand systems.
thermal and fluid sciences was my master's degree, so
Got it.
especially, so.
Got it.
I'm not,
Sure.
it's a dynamic thing. Statically, I got a whole lot of conversation for the first year about static pressures and blah, 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 and I'm like, it's not a static pressure.
Yeah.
I have 40 PSI, 38 PSI at my sprinkler head until I turn it on, and the incoming pressure drops to 10 PSI. at 10 gallons a minute. You know, so obviously there was something wrong in the lateral, which as soon as, you know, they buried the lateral, turned on the sprinklers and up they pop and all,
And now they work.
they're happy, yeah.
Yeah, okay, great. Just for my own, just to say it out loud, because I either write things down or I say things before I understand how they work. So, you have a main below the road that supplies city water to the neighborhood.
Yep.
Then you have a lateral T, so you've got a downsizing in pipe lateral size there.
Yep.
Then you've got a lateral that's your private lateral that comes from the T, which is typically at the lot line or road right of way, and that would run to your building. That would come in under your foundation, come up to your water meter horn, and then from there you'd branch off into your meter, which is a public-private partnership. You own it, the public puts it in, monitors it. And then you have a half-inch pipe supply throughout the house, or is it 3/4, 5/8, half-inch? Does it graduate down?
It goes through a 5/8 meter setter,
So it's a meter, the meter horn is 5/8.
5/8
Okay.
copper, which by itself is non-compliant. Anything over 8 feet per second in copper is considered non-compliant, and we're trying to flow 21 gallons a minute or something through it, so
Got
it immediately makes it non-compliant. No, it comes in and it steps up to 1.25 inches, so the main run in the basement is 1.25 inches. And
So
it's,
you've got an ample-sized main coming in from the meter into your private plumbing system. You've got an ample-sized main, an inch and a
it's
quarter.
borderline.
Okay.
It's borderline. Based on the losses, it would have been better to carry that 2-inch all the way in.
Is everything softened, or did you bypass your sprinkler system?
No, I bypass. The sprinkler's got its own meter,
Yeah,
so
okay.
it's separate. I gotta,
So you've got 2 meters in the system, but they're running in parallel?
yes,
So your 1.25 inch feeds it, and then it's metered,
yep.
and then it branches off of that and goes into your private system from there. So does that mean it's metered twice before it leaves to fill your house? Or it's metered separately?
Meter separate.
I don't quite understand how that's done unless you have 2 laterals coming in, but.
Well, we come in the 1.25 inches,
Mhm.
and then they split off a 1 inch,
There's a 1-inch domestic T
to
that
the
splits
sprinkler
off to the sprinkler meter.
and then it continues at 1 inch also up
Gotcha.
to.
Okay.
So they reduced it from 1.25 inches to 1 inch for some reason, and then back up to, well, down to 3/4 for the meter, 5/8 for the meter.
And then the smallest size pipe, I would assume, based on standards, is 1/2 inch. Is it copper in your house or is it
PEX.
PEX?
Okay.
Okay, so you've got low friction. Do you know how many fixtures? Do you know your fixture count?
I can give you
That would include-
everything's on this. I can send it to you electronically. If you
Yeah,
want.
I'm just trying to get a picture for how many fixtures. A lot of
See if I can
times,
read this.
in the building trades, you're not really mandated to give an SFU or a fixture flow rate count unless you peak over 16 fixtures. That's kind of a standard in the state of Wisconsin.
Well-
Once you get to 16 fixtures, then they want you to employ more tactics like isometric plan drawings and water calculations.
Well, it's required at that point to
Right.
submit plans, right?
So,
So
do you
it's-
know
it's
if you exceed
25
that
fixture units?
16?
It's 25 fixture units and 17 gallons a minute.
You have 25 fixture units in your house.
Yeah.
Dishwasher, wash
Well,
machine.
some of them are 2 or 3, right? So
And then from there, the plumbing system is really just drains and vents. That's pretty much it in total.
Yep.
So aside from foundation drains, which don't connect to your house plumbing system.
So the initial finding from the state when they made their finding was that they should have had 2.5-inch main in the basement.
2.5 public main.
No, 2.5, and the 1.25 inch, because Plenty was refusing to change. They wanted to step it up from 1.25 inches to 2.5.
Did you check with Belinsky to see if they put 2 or 2.5 inch main piping in any of their homes as a standard?
As a standard, no one does.
No one does, yeah.
Everyone that I've talked to says, well, this is the same thing I put in every home I built.
Yeah, right.
It doesn't make it right.
When you look at the larger DSPS code sections and you look at 381, which kind of governs all of it, and then it breaks off into sections, trades, HVAC, things like that. Under code 100, there definition of SFU is the measure of probable, in quotes, hydraulic demand on the water supply by fixture, which is why when you get to that 16 count, especially in a heavier occupant load, you start to experience pressure drop.
Well,
In a standard one family or two family home in the United States of America, you do experience pressure drops when multiple things are running at one time. And it's unfortunate, but it happens to everybody. And so when you read through 381.01 and on, you learn about the probability of things, and you learn a lot about the conjecture that's in that code.
Understand.
And you learn a lot about the ambiguity that's built into the state of Wisconsin DSPS building codes.
I had a whole page on it.
And it's somewhat purposeful, right? It's purposeful because if it was to be more objective, it would lend to a few different things in the marketplace. It would lend to higher cost of construction because isometrics and load engineering on water supply systems for single and two family homes would dramatically increase, A, and B, it would put a higher pressure demand on every municipality across the country. So your case isn't unique.
Yep.
However, that ambiguity is built in there for, I would have to assume, litigious reasons. You know, over time, these things come up, whether it's in the specifics of plumbing or HVAC or electrical or wood framing or masonry built buildings.
But
The science of building changes constantly, and the state of Wisconsin, in my opinion, does a pretty good job of keeping up with monitoring their codes. And you know, we're in the process of trying to dovetail with the IBC, and Wisconsin hasn't adopted that fully yet. They're still operating under the UDC. We used to operate under the Wisconsin Enrolled Building Codes, which was even less stringent. So when I look at SFUs and being a probable hydraulic demand, I start to think about the world of plumbing fixtures that are available to everybody. Some are foreign and they have zero filtration or zero water backflow prevention, and some are American made and they conform to a lot of standards set forth in, say, California. So I look at these probable things and I see an area there that's, let's call it gray. And I believe that a lot of that is purposeful for a reason. Good, bad, or indifferent, it's purposeful. And then when I look further at 381.01, section 89, under engineered systems, again, in quotes, it states that site design systems, like the one you have at your house, site designed by the plumber, are supposed to meet the intent, again, in air quotes, of the code, but not, in air quotes again, as written by the state DSPS, the enumerated specifics of the state plumbing code. So it builds in further gray area or ambiguity for us to all assume that the person that's hired is doing the best they can.
well, let me ask you a question.
And let me just finish my point and then I'll take your question. And then under section 143, it talks about, again in air quotes, the load factor, the total connected fixture unit flow rate, and its influence on the system itself. And then it moves from there immediately into DFUs. So that's the end of the subject line for plumbing. When it moves into DFUs, it starts talking about drain fixture units. That's a whole nother discussion. People have issues, litigious issues around this state with drain fixture unit stuff.
It's a lot more about drain than there is.
Vent gargling, vent not dispersing fumes, things like that. I've read a multitude of, but one thing that the state does in the beginning of 381.10 and 381.20 is they give the municipality exercising jurisdiction via an agent, that is the agent that we contract with here in the village of Waterford, that they may not require plumbing plans, engineering, calculations for single family or two family homes. So in all of my research, limited as it's been, I don't come up with anything that places a requirement on a municipality, but then the fallback on that is that if a municipality has an issue, the state supersedes it. So the state DSPS does govern code, right? At the end of the day, when we have a question about a project or a question about an inspection, or we have an agitated builder, which happens in this world, that brings up a code enforcement issue that they don't agree with, both the inspection enforcement agent and the builder meet with a state representative to see which code does in fact end up superseding the local codes.
Yep.
So you've got this tree of sequence from the high authority at the state that builds a ton of ambiguity into the code for good reason, and then it trickles down to the local municipality to inspect that for customers like you. And then if you look at our local Waterford code of ordinances under 98.11, there is a sentence in there, and at the end of that sentence, it leaves it up to us as a village, acting by the conduit of our agent, to mandate plans and calculations for everything. So I'm not, I mean, I'll take your question now, but I'm not quite understanding why the village of Waterford would A, change the code, or try to lobby the state of Wisconsin to change the code, or furthermore try to lobby lawmakers in the state of Wisconsin, or furthermore the Wisconsin Supreme Court to change a building code outlook for a single family or two family residential code that exists currently, unless there's a larger class action lawsuit that would bring about change. So
let me
I'm not so
respond to
certain
you.
that I would want to open up discussion on changing the village of Waterford's code, particularly at this point in time,
Not asking for a code change.
until, I thought that's where you're heading,
No.
excuse me.
No code change.
But,
We're not,
I mean, okay, so
the
let me,
argument is,
let me back
what
up.
is the code
What
today?
you said was, stop order on all current projects or plans being contemplated until the village of Waterford updates their plumbing section to at least administer water calculations and supervise that, and then oversee the construction of plumbing as a trade in single family and two family dwellings, specifically to increase sizing so people don't have these unmitigated pressure drops.
So why do I pull a plumbing permit?
Well, actually, my advice would be to have a qualified licensed plumber pull a plumbing permit
Right,
for
but
you.
why?
Yeah.
If the
Well,
village isn't gonna look at anything, why?
Well, I
The
guess,
building inspector does not inspect the plumbing to the code. So, let me back up just a second.
I
if you
would
don't
beg
mind.
to differ.
Cause you had some question, you had something up earlier, you were talking, 381 talks about not needing it. 38247 says
I read it thoroughly.
the empirical method will be used by master plumbers. The
And they
empirical
do.
method is this water calc.
Right.
It doesn't say they have to draw official plans, doesn't say they have to do any of that. It says they have to do a water calc and apply that to the single family house. The SBS has ruled on my first case, that it is required. So, yes, it's not required for commercial buildings, certain sizes. Master plumber has responsibility to use the empirical method. He has there's alternatives listed, which he can hire an engineer and do it. Those are alternatives. It says it shall use empirical or other approved alternative methods.
Yep.
We don't have any of those right now. So we have nothing. So again, I go back to my question, why pull a plumbing permit if I'm gonna have to replumb my house? Am I gonna pull a permit? And what's Martin gonna look at? Does it look pretty? Okay, it looks pretty, I guess we're okay.
I'll reserve comment on that.
Well, what I got was we don't require water calcs unless something looks funny. That was the exact comment from her. So, I'm not asking for a code change, I'm asking for someone to properly interpret the current code, which Martin is responsible for ensuring the home is plumbing compliant to the full section 382. 382 says you gotta have 20 PSI at the controlling fixture. At peak load, per the empirical method.
Peak demand.
Right. Now I agree. You could do an engineering method and say, well, there's only 2 people in the house and they're only gonna use this much water and blah, 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 and what's the likelihood you're gonna ever require peak demand in the house? Almost never. But that's the empirical method. That was spelled out, it's spelled out to, almost anyone can do it. It's not hard. It's designed that way, and the master plumbers still can't do it. Horner submitted half a dozen incorrectly completed water calcs for my home. At least a half dozen.
They're getting their information from our Village of Waterford water utility.
Partially. And
How
that's where
else
they're
would-
pulling them, you know, Rick goes out and takes the pressure at the meter and says it's here. I had to force Doug
He
to.
doesn't take it at the meter, he takes it at the hydrant.
At the hydrant, sorry, I keep saying that.
I mean, that's kind of standard for most municipalities is when you ask their water utility for water pressure at your property or near your property, you get a reading at a hydrant. That's
But
typically how it's done.
the empirical method says to use the minimum pressure when the tower's at the minimum. If you're not using a pump, if you're not using a pressure tank, if you're using gravity, you take it at the minimum tower pressure.
Have you
Tower
investigated having a water pump added to your system?
Yeah, but I bought a $600,000 house that doesn't meet code. Can I add a pump? Sure. Should I have to add a pump? No. So it's interpretation of code. Any more questions?
Nope.
I just have a couple, if that's all right.
Yeah, please.
Just Attorney Todd Terry for the village. Michael, I think I know the answer to this, but you have recourse on this issue via Horner, is that correct?
DSPS has ruled, but Horner has not replied to an email in 7 months.
Okay. You've also been engaged in either litigation or arbitration with Linsky, is that correct?
I went to mediation with Belinsky, and of course Horner was in the room. Never resolved anything on the plumbing. Filed the DSPS complaint against Horner because that was the most direct. They're the master plumber in charge, so I started there.
Okay.
Belinsky denied any responsibility. When I told him that, you know, when the state came up in January of last year and told me that it was non-compliant, in February they gave me the ultimatum to bring it to compliance. It took us till July to get a proper plan even put together. And then since July 9th, I have not heard from them.
That's from Horner specifically?
That's from Horner specifically.
Okay.
Belinsky has got a DSPS open case right now, and as well as Safe Built. I have an open case with DSPS with them as well.
Okay. Just no resolutions, any of the 3 at this point?
Well, technically I got a resolution with Horner, but they're not doing anything, so I don't know what good that does me.
I don't know, but what's the recourse there if they don't respond or correct? I assume they lose their license, is that correct?
You have to call the state.
I don't know anything further.
It's just one question.
Yep.
If Horner or Belinsky were to offer you to come into your house and put a water booster pump on at no cost, do you think that that would rectify the issue?
For my house, in what I bought was a home with no pump. Now I got a pump that's gotta be maintained, and noise, vibration, power.
If they,
Yeah, they've offered to put a pump in.
they have, okay.
Yeah, they wanted to put a $800 pump out of Home Depot.
So you've got that offer, and you've rejected that offer.
Yeah, early on.
If they upped the stakes and put a better pump in that had a lifetime warranty and,
Does it matter to this case, I guess?
I'm sorry?
Does it matter to the outcome of whether or not the house was built properly and inspected properly?
No, what I'm trying to do is reach an end to your solution. I'm trying
I-
to see if there's a possibility that
I'm not asking
if
for that help.
that was added to your house at no cost and maintained under a lifetime warranty for the life that your name is on the title of that home,
I'll deal
Would
with
that-
my
would that-
case here. This is for the village of Waterford.
yeah, the only reason I'm asking is just want to see if that's something that would solve your issue.
A pump would, a proper pump, but, what I didn't bring up is other water calcs. I mean, Trailside, you know, is on the hill. You can see over the entire city, over town and village. And they're claiming 70 PSI at the main.
Our water utility is claiming 70 there?
No, that's what they submitted to Martin. And it's approved and being built. And they use 70 on every single one, and yet you know that's built on a hill. Not every single one of them has 70 at the main.
Mhm.
So I don't know. I mean, I don't have any, I don't know, maybe they put in a sub booster system for the entire, I don't know. There's no plans for it, so I don't know.
So water pump could be your solution.
Could be my solution, yes.
Okay.
One I've chosen not to do and one that everyone could do, but like I said, every home every permit I've pulled with data does not have data to back up the systems they're putting in. Every plumber told me we put this in every house. Well, it's wildly non-compliant in my house. I only have 37 at the meter. With a 2-story house.
At the hydrant or the meter?
Meter.
So you got a pressure reduction somewhere from the hydrant to the meter. If the
No,
hydrant
I
is
only
at
have
50.
I only have 38 or 39 at the meter at the main.
Oh, I thought you said 50 earlier.
That was Park Villas, the one I was showing you. That's not my home.
Got it.
That's one being built right now.
39 at hydrant.
So we don't have much pressure. Yes, I can boost it, but you know that's a pump and maintenance and ideally a pressure tank. So we're not, you know, they were looking at something that was running all the time basically. Every time you turn the faucet on, no pressure tank, no nothing. So,
I know they make piston style pumps that
Yeah.
don't require a spinning motor per se. They operate on electricity with contacts on each end.
Yeah.
And
No, I've been looking at
It'll
it
draw
for 2
water
years now.
into it.
I've been at this for 3 years. So.
yeah.
Good.
I don't.
All right, any other questions?
Thank you.
Just have, excuse me, a few things from the village standpoint.
Sure.
Can certainly have Martin weigh in as well. A couple of provisions out of SPS.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mike, you probably know the SPS better than I do at this point.
Yep, doesn't say funds are required.
I'm just giving you that, just so I'm giving. Like I said, happy to have Mr. Montoya weigh in as well, answer some questions, but just from the village standpoint, certainly empathetic to Mr. Billadou's situation, we understand that. I think when you look at the grand context here, the person or persons responsible for the issue really falls to the contractor, the home builder here. I know Mike has pursued those avenues and probably still is. From the village standpoint, what I gave you, just some snippets from SPS 320. First and foremost is it's 320.02 sub 3, which is a very short provision, but I think it's important. It kind of sets the context here and talks about legal responsibility. Department of the municipality having jurisdiction shall not assume legal responsibility for the design or construction of dwellings. And that's really what this comes down to. I understand the request here is basically asking you guys to interpret 9811 requiring submission of water calcs for residential construction. And Will Martin has undertaken that, just until we get further clarity here. When you look at especially 320.02 sub 3, it's really, you know, even if you submit the water calcs to the village here for review, Martin's not a master plumber, Martin's not an engineer, he does not have to be, he's a state licensed residential dwelling inspector, excuse me. And it's really asking the village to become the owner's rep, the owner's engineer, and that's clearly not the intent here. Again, empathetic to the situation, And when you do look at, and I gave you this as well, and Michael referenced it, but if you look at 320.009 sub 5, the required plans, and Martin could certainly testify to this with you guys, 320.09 sub 5 required plans, and there's a list of required plans that runs on to the back of that page. That matches and mirrors our ordinance as to what has to be submitted for a residential building permit. You will note within there, I should say, that it's sub B, sub C, the only reference to plumbing, the location of plumbing fixtures. Martin can certainly testify that he reviews plans that have plumbing schematic on it and a layout of the plumbing, confirms that it needs head space or head space and probably side space and front space for toilet closets, whatever it may be. But again, it does not require him to review and calculate load, flow, any of those types of things. Excuse me, again, that's really a private cause of action that fortunately or unfortunately falls upon the homeowner to enforce that when the time comes. And I think if you read 320.09 sub 5 required plans and you read it with sub 6 required data, and you guys have dealt with statutes, with ordinances before. I mean, you read the entirety of the statute to give effect to it, the intent of it. We've heard about that already in exchanges. But sub 6 is all plans submitted for approval. To me, that goes exactly with sub 5, all plans required there. All plans submitted for approval shall be accompanied by sufficient data, calculations, and information to determine if the dwelling will meet the requirements of this code. It references the plans that are required. It does not talk about water flows. It does not talk about anything other than basically the plumbing layout, if you will, the location of plumbing fixtures. I said it before, but Martin has started requiring water calcs with submissions. What he does with that, it's really, I'm not asking you guys, and I don't want you to direct him to do a review of the water calc analysis because it's outside the scope of his services. I think the only thing you could do there is require that a plumber submit the actual water calcs, and I forget what the worksheet was that you referenced that took Corner 7 or 8 tries to maybe get right. But I think that's the only remedy, potential remedy here, and I don't even think that would be appropriate right now without an adoption of a new ordinance requiring that. You're asked to determine what 9811 requires. Fortunately or unfortunately, I think we've been compliant with 9811. Certainly disagree with that, but
Well, I'm not saying
this
you're
is
not complying with 9811, I'm just saying, because that's your plans, you adopted 382, and in my book, 382 says that you gotta have you have to design the system with 382-40-7.
which is on a master plumber.
Which is on the master plumber. UDC says the building inspector has to be ensured that the plumbing is gonna be compliant. It even, even says that, the UDC, all this has to be reviewed. I'm missing it here. But it literally states that, you have to be a qualified inspector, if they are, and so we say, in the village code, the building inspector is responsible for compliance. So that a legal action says, legally,
I mean, I see the building inspector as having to review the plans submitted under sub 5 320.
Their responsibility is compliance. That's why we submit plumbing permits. Compliance, not just to document that, hey, you changed this from this to this.
I think to me, it's compliance with what's required under 320.09 sub 5.
The SPS has told me that subsection 6 applies.
I respectfully disagree with.
I understand,
Yeah.
but that's what the SPS has told me.
And then that
And I think I forwarded that
Yeah.
to you.
if I may, I'll bring attention to 320.09 sub 6 item C, as I spoke of earlier. A municipality exercising jurisdiction may not require plans or calculations to be stamped or sealed by an architect or an engineer. That's a blanket statement. That's that gray area about all the plans, they're in the required data. And then furthermore, we carry a conditional approval stamp, and I'm sure when building permits get issued, they're issued based on conditional approval. And if there are no further conditions stated from the building inspection agent, then the plans should be approved. Are they approved in a little less stringent manner than you'd prefer, Michael? I would say yes, for if I look at it from your point of view.
How about 38224C2? A master plumber shall sign and date all plumbing plans and accompanying specifications. And that is tied into a section where they're allowed to sign their own. So someone needs to have a plan, otherwise you wouldn't have code.
Right, but like when I identified earlier, when I said I gotta speak it out loud to hear it, a home's plumbing system is pretty rudimentary.
Mm-hmm.
And day to day, our building inspectors that work for us as agent do a great job of inspecting type, quality, length of materials, fittings are quality fit, and that the system itself is installed properly. The system sizing does fall under the licensed plumber. That's why the DSPS makes certain that every licensed contractor takes continuing education credits to be updated on the latest and greatest in building sciences to conform themselves with updated building codes. So it is a trust initiative between contractors that are licensed with the state, building inspection departments, municipalities, and the end user. And empathetic to your case, as Todd Terry said, we all are. It seems like you have an anomaly.
No.
And unless I heard a larger case come forward where multiple homes were enduring stresses on their plumbing system, I wouldn't be inclined to change the way that business operates here at the village on one case. That's just my personal opinion. I can't speak for the rest of the people on the appeals board.
I've got other people in the neighborhood that have sprinklers won't work, pop-up pump sprinklers won't work. Everyone complains of pressure. My neighbor's house is also non-compliant. I can pull the data. I haven't had to send it to DSPS, but Horner accidentally gave me all the data for their house, and they were sending me data, and it's the same thing. It's not compliant. So
What I'll do is I'll just take it back to I feel strongly that your claim is between the builder of the home and the hired contractor that they employed, and their licensure, and their.
They require a plumbing, a UDC guy to be plumbing, an inspector to be certified in plumbing. And everything lays out. You wouldn't go build a house and say, oh, here's my picture. Oh, there's my house, I'm gonna go build this. You don't allow it for HVAC, you don't allow it for electrical, you don't allow it for trusses. Why would you allow it for plumbing?
Well,
You're not asking
the same data is required,
No.
which is minimal for HVAC and electrical.
You're requiring nothing for plumbing. So you put it back to the master plumber, right? Shouldn't he tell you what he's gonna put in that house? Or is he gonna tell you that I'm gonna plumb the house?
When you apply for a building permit as a builder or as a homeowner, and you input on the line that asks for your licensed HVAC contractor's license number,
Yep.
that's there for a specific reason, because it puts that contractor on the hook legally to do what is right for the consumer and follow the codes that are outlined, and they're outlined. They're
So
not
4
as
different plumbers
specific.
have submitted water calcs to the village, and they're all wrong. I've got that in my stack there.
Well, I would question their effectiveness as a plumber. I wouldn't question our building inspector on it, that's
Well,
for sure.
That's the role of the building inspector, is to ensure compliance. And if you don't tell me what I'm building, I can build anything.
Yeah.
You require everything but plumbing. And yet I believe state code does require it to the data to be provided, no plans, no official plans, but you gotta tell them what I'm putting in this house. Otherwise, you cannot confirm compliance. And his job is adherence to code, and the code's for 82. If the plumbing's not compliant, he should be calling it out. Is he legally responsible? No, I mean, but I believe code says we should be doing more than we're doing today. I don't think code needs to change. I don't think our code needs to change, the village code needs to change. I just think our enforcement of the code needs to change.
Or inspection of the code.
Enforcement of the code,
Yeah.
inspection.
Enforcement's
However
an after effect. Inspection is happening as it's being built
I mean,
in phases.
right. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, is there any other conversation?
Well, I mean, I'm not a plumber, but before I buy a house, I test everything out. And if everything is so substandard, I would have at least noticed that, and had something to say to the contractor or before I bought the house in the first place. Yeah.
So in general, when a normal homeowner buys a home, they assume it's been inspected and meets code. Who's responsible for that? The homeowner? Again, why do we pull building permits?
Okay, I'm not, I think Mr. Bilodeau, Mr. Nash, Mr. Terry, I think we covered all the bases, from everybody's standpoint. So I'm not gonna bring everything back up and rehash it. I agree in a variety of variances with everybody. I know that's not the great answer, but I understand Mr. Bilodeau and the situation. I also understand, I'm not gonna speak for him. Mr. Bilodeau, you're in the room, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I do believe he is trying to define and weed through this and actually help the village of Waterford going forward. Would you say that's accurate?
Correct.
Okay. I think that is an important thing that has been brought, forward, and we need to debate and look into that further down the road. But that being said, I agree with Todd Terry and I agree with Bob Nash that going through all this, I believe we are in compliance and we are following what is the letter of the law here. Again, that doesn't solve Mr. Bilodeau's issues. My question would have been the same thing earlier, and I don't want to get back into it too much. I did see your recommended cost for repair to you and to other homeowners was $10K to $30K was in your presentation.
10K is a decent pump install.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I figured.
25K is replumbing.
Yeah, and I am kind of with Trustee Nash. I've heard a lot about water pressure issues in this village. We're the first person to really take it to a level of this level to discuss this and actually dive into it. I caught something you said about the home next to you that you're saying is not compliant. That resident seems to not really care. I know you're not going to speak for him. I don't know it.
No, and that's what I said. If I'd moved in my house like it is today, I would have just said it's a standard low pressure issue that the village has.
So this is the unfortunate issues. I think we have you who is very passionate about it, not only for your own home that you spent $600,000 on, but for the village of Waterford going forward. And then you have a neighbor right next to you that doesn't care. So I'm with Trustee Nash until, unfortunately, the voices are louder and the numbers are larger. My feelings are we are interpreting and we are in compliance with what we're doing. That being said, we do need to act on this item, so I'm looking for some type of motion for an action.
I'll make a motion to keep our building code sections as written in the village of Waterford following the state DSPS outline that we've been presented from our village attorney, and at this time, no change.
All right, I have a motion, do I have a second?
I'll second that.
A second from Carl, is there any other conversation or questions?
Oh, I've asked
You have?
plenty.
It's been a very good conversation debate all the way across. All right, hearing none, all in favor of that?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Bilodeau, for your presentation, and thank you, Carl and Bob.
Thank you.